Hey guys, back with yet another acquisition. Been on a bit of a roll lately, sort of. Now, keep in mind, most of the sets you see me work on, restore, are not mine. They're for customers, like the Magnavox, like the Stromberg Carlson TC-10. Not my sets. Some are. The Emerson is. This one is. So, I got a tip about it on Facebook Marketplace. It was initially listed for $500, and there was a lot of criticism that was way too much. And yeah, to be fair, especially after meeting the seller, he had no idea. It was a rather elderly woman was selling her house and the contents, downsizing, and he was helping her out. Just trying to do her a favor by listing the stuff for sale. But at least he had the smarts too. He quickly lowered it. It's $500, $350, it hit $100, and I figured I should go check it out because I knew what it was. I did a little research on it. It's the very first TV that Magnavox sold. It's a model MV-10. A little hard to find service info. If you look up MV-10, it's not even listed in the rider's index. However, I just went, I think it's in volume 3 or 4, and just looked up the earliest instance of a Magnavox TV, and indeed the chassis seems to match this. Although they don't list MV-10 as the model. There's a tag on the back I'll show you in a moment. Yes, it's very plain. It's very simple. To some collectors, that's the appeal. It's rare. It's really early. It has channel 1. It has some somewhat unusual design features, but as we'll see, they borrowed heavily from RCA. Maybe not borrowed, maybe that probably just paid a licensing fee to use some of RCA's circuit designs. So it's small and it's modest, but if you recall the RCA ATS-30, I got a couple of recently. It actually is a pretty similar design to this. They simplified some stuff. But this little sucker, it draws a lot of power. I think it's 250 watts. It has a rather complicated power supply and biasing setup. So the first thing that might strike you is, where are the controls? Well, obviously there's a handle down here, so we pull that, and here we get the controls. And get in here, there's channel 1. I don't know if that's how the dial channel plate's supposed to be, but it's kind of goofy. 1 starts here, going counterclockwise, they're upside down for a while, and then come around 213. Boy, I don't see any labels on the rest of these controls. Oh, there they are. So, the woman I met, I would guesstimate, was well into her 80s. She talked about this set when it was new. I don't know if she was a child when it was new, or if she was maybe she and her husband bought it. I didn't get to talk to her a whole lot, so I don't know all the details of that. The only thing she told me for sure was that in the 80s, I believe she said they put it in the garage. And at the time it was still working, maybe. That's all I know. It is on the original stand, which is another big reason why I got it, because these original tables are hard to find. It fits in there perfectly. There's a little edge on the bottom of the... That was weird, my camera freaked out. As I was saying, the top of the table, it's recessed. It has like a 3/4 of an inch edge, and then it's recessed, and the set just fits down perfectly into it, and it's pretty stable. I've been posting a lot of photos, period photos of TVs as they were originally placed in a living room, partly because I was curious to see how did they fit into people's decor, with TV being a new thing and there being a variety of cabinet designs. And I noticed that very few instances, at least of the photos I have, did they have an original stand or a matching stand. They put them on a stool, on a table, somewhere. Part of my thinking is these were so expensive relatively speaking, that they couldn't even afford it, weren't willing to pay the extra few bucks for the stand. I don't know. And I imagine there were some models, budget models, where there wasn't even a stand, but most did. Even something like the Motorola VT71, little 7-inch set, yeah, they had a stand. You just never see them. So, yeah, it was out in the garage. I don't doubt that after seeing the top of it, and I'm sure they were using it for storage or whatnot, so it's a little rough. However, it's not quite as horrible as it appears. There's a lot of scratches in the lacquer, but they're not that deep. So I'm thinking a little Howard's Restore finish, a little wax, maybe a little steel wool. This could look a whole lot better. The rest of it looks pretty good. It's just dirty. Let me turn it around and we'll take a look at what's inside. If you hear some creaking during the video, that's the garage door. It's very windy today and the aluminum is flexing. Crazy spring weather. Hey, another nice thing about this is it smells really nice. When I got it, it was in her living room. So I don't know at what point it went from the garage back to being in the house, but I'm sure she had all sorts of scented candles and potpourri and whatnot, so it smells nice. However, it is filthy. The original back is gone, and there's also no bottom on it. And what the dirt that's on here is baked on. I tried to clean a little bit off of the CRT neck and base to get a better look at it, and I can't even get it off. Looks like there might be some pet, like cat hair, embedded in the filth. So it's going to need some cleaning. But here it is. I popped that off because I want to get a better look at it. The mystery has been solved. When I got this yesterday, it was too dark out here. I couldn't see what was going on. That is very, very cool. Well, one, the type of CRT it is, and two, the cool graphics on it. It's a Roland Visitron, which is something I've never heard of before, but most importantly, it's a 10FP4. So what struck me right away and why I was so curious about the picture tube is there's no ion trap magnet on it. The tube chart says 12KP4, which does not need an ion trap. It's an aluminized early 12-inch CRT. This is not a 12-inch set. So I was really curious as to what the heck do we have. A 10FP4 is an early aluminized 10-inch picture tube, which is the best possible thing you could hope for. Now we just have to hope it still has some life left. No ion trap. Cannot get an ion burn, really, realistically. And it makes a brighter picture. So cool. You don't have to fiddle around with getting the sweet spot with the magnet or any of that stuff. It just works. They cost more back in the day. That's why you don't see them as often. Now something else I've been very curious about is what the heck is this? I haven't looked enough at the service info, such as it is, to figure out what that connector's for. Yeah, I've seen sets from 51, 52 that had an adapter for a color wheel. This is too early for that. That's not what that is. Phonograph input? Maybe. But I didn't see any switch on the front for phono or anything like that. Maybe it's the antenna input. No, that's over here. Kind of smashed. Thought it might be the AC interlock, but it doesn't even have one. It just, the line cord just goes into a strain relief. It needs to be replaced. We have horizontal drive, horizontal speed, horizontal lock. Horizontal speed is the frequency. I guess you can think of frequency as a speed, but that's the speed at which the horizontal oscillator oscillates. And it's the more complicated type of power supply where it has positive and negative rails. We have a DC bias on the yoke, so we get centering controls. So it's a little looking TV, modest looking. It's got a lot going on. See, there's a whole bunch of filter caps. We have 4 of them, and notice they're all insulated from the chassis. All have cardboard covers. That's because the negative on the caps doesn't go to ground. It goes to a negative supply rail. Only a single 5U4 rectifier, though, I think. But they must be pushing it kind of hard because this set does draw a lot of power. Notice those coils, those look just like RCA, big old, those are actually traps. Those outer coils there with a large diameter wire. And there's a cap, it's probably on the back side so we can't see it. Those help shape the response curve. Inside of that, I believe, is an IF transformer, but the external thing, I think, is a trap. Meaning frequencies right at that resonant frequency get shunted to ground, so you get sharp cutoffs for your bandpass response. Anyways, I'm just rambling. That's probably the vertical blocking transformer. For the vertical oscillator, that gave me trouble with the RCA CT-214 where it was open. Hopefully this one will not be open. There's a good website about the history of the Magnavox Corporation, and they show this set. And the little I know about it, that's where I know about it. I believe it was made in Indiana. That's what the... Oh, I don't think I showed you the model tag, did I? The Magnavox Corporation, Fort Wayne, Indiana. MV-10B. B is probably the cabinet style, although they have a separate line for style down below, so who knows what the B is. They did make a blonde version, but this obviously is not the blonde version. 250 watts at 117 volts AC. Serial number 23520. There's no way they made 23,520 of these. Maybe they made 2,000 of these, but not 25,000. Line cord is completely shot, crispy. That absolutely needs to get replaced. And here, there's no bottom. I don't know what's supposed to be down here, but I'm sure it was not supposed to be just out in the open. I don't know what that is. Speaker connector, maybe. And it is somewhat RCA looking down below. That looks very similar to a transformer from an RCA, and I think the tuner might be the same. It's hard for me to say because in my RCA sets they all have a cover over the tuner. This one's probably supposed to be, or at least the bottom pan of the chassis would have covered it. But it's a rotary switch, wafer switch. That's how the RCAs are. And yeah, that's channel 1. Alright. For the time being, it's going to have to sit out here because I don't have anywhere to put it. But it is nice that it has a table. So at least I don't have to find something to put it on top of. I do have a plan for the basement too. I have another one of these shelving units in the basement. I'm just going to bring it out here and put it up next to this guy and pile up all my spare parts, chassis and stuff. I got a lot of junk in the basement, doesn't need to be down there, especially parts, chassis. So I'm figuring I should move them all out here. That's what this mostly is the boneyard. It's where I come to scavenge parts for stuff. Anyways, yeah, as soon as I can make some room, I want to bring this inside ASAP so it doesn't get exposed to the elements any more than it already has. And I'm hoping I can find, I've already heard from 1 or 2 guys that have worked on this chassis, or I think somebody said the back is just some perforated metal or something like that. I'm hoping to see some photos or get some info about what was on the back and what was on the bottom. So I want to protect this. So let's go inside and I'll give you a brief look at the schematic. Boy, nice speaker for a modest little 10-inch set. Here we go. It's in Riders Volume 2 under model CT-214A. 23 tubes in this little set. There's something else that was throwing me off about the picture tube. This also says 12 kp4, but if we look down below where they have an asterisk, it says some models have a 10jp4 or 10bp4. There is no 10jp4. They must have meant 10fp4. I don't know if that's a mistake or it was a proposed tube type that never got made. I don't know. Let's keep going. I thought this was curious too. The picture size for the JP4, they're different than the 10BP4. So my set is a double D, meaning it has, the picture tube is curved on the left and right. Maybe on the sets with the 10BP4 they used a rounded rectangular opening. I don't know. I don't know. Let me see what the labels are, controls are. The labels on mine, they're in that fold down lid, but they're pretty worn off. So power, what they call sound, that'd be volume, brightness, vertical, horizontal hold, picture would be contrast, and then we get our channel selector and fine tuning. So this is good that we have a pretty comprehensive service info. The schematic is a little hard to read, as you'll see, but they do break down the sections with block diagrams and subsections of the schematic, so I think we'll be alright. So this may very well be an identical tuner to the RCA, which also uses a trio of 6J6 dual triodes for oscillator converter and IF. I believe this is done because it's all balanced 300 ohm twin lead coming in, and they just do balanced all the way through using both sides of the tube. Hopefully we won't have to delve into the tuner and make adjustments to it, but if we do, at least we have the info. And, this is pretty comprehensive stuff. They talk about the bandwidth and band pass and the channel 6 megahertz slices for each channel, and the IF curve, and all the key frequency points. So that's very nice. More comprehensive than I've had in some sets recently, that's for sure. Well, we're still just talking about the tuner at this point. And now we get into the IF alignment, and we keep going. Oh, a checklist if you have potential problems, things to check. If you have these conditions, poor vertical linearity, poor horizontal linearity, and they tell you what parts to check. Very nice troubleshooting guide. Alright, now we're going to do a parts list. Whole mess of paper caps. I'm thinking maybe I'll restuff this, maybe, because it looks to be all original. For a set that seems to have seen a lot of use, I don't know, it looks like all the original caps are in it. So the one downside to this is the schematic. It's not very easy to read. I do have a copy of Volume 2, but Volume 2 is goofy. Volume 1 and 2 of the rider service info, I went the wrong way, came in two sizes. I have the earlier Volume 1 and 2, which is 8.5 by 11. Later they came out in like a ledger format. I don't think the schematic's folded out too. So what I'm getting at is I don't know that my schematic will be a whole lot better than this. But anyways, here's what we have. This is my favorite part of the schematic, I think. This is the IF, and this is the AGC network, and tube biasing. Can you imagine doing a node analysis on that circuit and trying to figure out the voltage at each node on this using Thevenin's equivalent diagram or whatever? I mean, man. I've seen somewhat similar sets in all these early TVs where they have a series of usually 1K resistors to divide the voltage down for each of the stages, but this is a whole new level. As the contrast control's down in here. Often it's over here in the video amp after the detector, but here it's on the biasing, which controls the gain of the IF, and it has 4 IF stages. And this 270 picofarad coupling gap is exactly what RCA did. And on the RCA, those are often bad. Those are mica caps, and I've definitely had problems with those. So that'll be something to check on. And curiously, it uses an early germanium diode for the detector rather than a 6AL5, which they do also use. For example, it does have DC restoration. This is a 6AL5 here. So why did they use a 1N34 for DC restoration? I assume because it couldn't handle the DC voltage levels or something along those lines. Otherwise, it's a pretty conventional design. Nothing too outrageous. as compared to some of the other sets I've worked on. 5V4 damper. It's kind of before there were dedicated damper tubes. Well, they show there is a fuse and an interlock. I don't know. Mine doesn't seem to have an interlock. The power cord just goes straight into it. And here we get into that goofy power supply I'll have to be careful of. So it has a complicated bleeder network. You have a 5U4 down here, and then they double up some of the caps to get more capacity. We've got 72 microfarad, pretty oddball value. I just use an 80 for that. But these negatives, yeah, unfortunately, like I said, you can't read that. I think it's supposed to be minus 86. Maybe minus 14, minus 3.5, plus 135, plus 225, maybe. And the caps are wired in. Generally, the negatives are going to the negative most rail. And looks like these are 475 volt caps, at least the ones that span the full. So I'll get some 500 volt caps for that. Parts placement diagram, so it's pretty comprehensive. I don't know if there's a SAMS for this. I haven't looked yet. It might very well be. Might be more legible. And here's a revision of the schematic. So that's often a problem with these early TVs, is they made rapid changes because it was so early. This is the very first model, as you can imagine, when it first came out. There were some kinks in it, and they made some tweaks to the design. So I'll have to try to figure out exactly what revision I have. On the other hand, since mine seems to be all original, if I can read the parts values, I'll just replace what I see with what I, with an equivalent. Okay, that's going to be it for now. Hope you enjoyed this look at Magnavox's very first 10-inch tabletop black and white television from around 48, maybe 49. Thanks for watching.